Math 2, Unit 12B, Lesson 2. Today we are talking about completing the square. Okay, now what I mean by completing the square is we're going to end up having problems and we want to turn them into squares. If I were to factor this, just this part right here, what would it factor to be? What would be my parentheses? Very good. It's x plus 3 and x plus 3 because 3 plus 3 multiplies to be 9 and adds to be 6. Now, do you notice how they're both exactly the same? Yes. And so that is a square. X plus 3 squared equals 49. So when we complete the square and we have our square by itself, we did this back in 12A. At this point, what could I do to solve? Good. We would take the square root of both sides. So we're going to go ahead and finish solving this one. We take the square root of both sides. We get x plus 3. Actually, it doesn't have to be in parentheses. Equals what? Very good. Plus or minus 7. Remember that anytime you take the square root, it's plus or minus. And then we would subtract 3 to both sides. We have x equals negative 3 plus or minus 7. And what do you do at this point? Good. Negative 3 plus 7, which equals 4. And negative 3 minus 7 equals negative 10. So my answers are that x equals 4 and negative 10. Now, do you guys remember what this actually represents? Like, what do these numbers mean to you? Very good. They are your x-intercepts. So on a graph, we'd have a mark here at negative 10 and a mark at 4. And these are our points. Those are the x-intercepts. And this graph we know would end up going up because a value is positive. Okay, the reason why I think somebody said, why is it not set equal to 0? Because we're talking about completing the square. And remember, once you have the square by itself, you take the square root of both sides. It's normally when you're factoring, you do want it set equal to 0, but this time we're talking about completing the square, so it doesn't have to equal 0 right now. Yes? How do you know it goes up again? So you're always looking at the number in front of your x squared term, which is your a value. And so the number, there isn't a number in front, which really means there's a positive 1. Okay? All right, so if you look back at this problem here, oops, sorry. Can you tell me what could I do to 6 in order to get the number 3? Yeah, in terms of like multiplying, dividing, what would you do with 6 in order to get 3? Divide by 2, okay? And then 3 times 3 makes 9. And so when you're completing the square, you will always take that middle number and divide it by 2 in order to figure out the number that would make your square. Okay, 6 divided by 2 makes 3, which will end up making your square. Okay, and then whatever that number is times the same number makes your end number. Okay, and so we're going to do another example here to see if you guys understand. If I had the equation x squared plus 10x, and I'm going to put a blank here, what value would make this so I could write it as a square? Good, 25 is correct. How do we get it? Well, we always take the number with the x, which happens to be our b value. We always take that b value and divide it by 2, which makes 5. And then you take that number and you multiply it by itself, which means I'm just going to square it. And 5 squared is 25. Okay, also, if we're writing this as a square, your square is always this half number as well. So whatever, when I divided 10 divided by 2, I got 5. That means this square is going to be x plus 5 squared. And again, 5 plus 5 adds to be 10. 5 times 5 multiplies to be 25. So this is now a square. So we're going to practice this, okay? So going to these examples, I want us to write them as a square, and I want us to find the c value. Okay? So the first thing to figure out what our square would be is that you're going to take this value and do what with it? Divide by 2. And you might want to get a calculator for what we're going to be doing today if you don't have one. 50 divided by 2, though, is what? 25. So my square is going to be what? Good. X plus 25 squared is correct. And then the correct C value that I would need would be perfect. We would just square 25 and get 625. And so these are the two answers that I want to know about. Okay, now on this next one, we're going to get a decimal. That is okay. It's not a big deal. We can deal with decimals. It's especially easy because we have calculators we can use. Okay? And so what is going to be my square on this second example? We're going to start by taking negative 9 and dividing it by 2. And what does that equal? Good. Negative 4.5. And so in my square, how am I going to write this one? Because now there's a minus sign. How will I write it? Good. It'll just be x minus 4.5 squared. So if this number is a negative, then that means both of this is going to be negative. Okay? If it's positive, it'll be positive. And then how do I find the correct C value? Good. You're going to, multiply it twice or square it. So when you do that, what is negative 4.5 squared? 20.25. Good. 20.25. Now, when you square a negative, it becomes a positive. So it's always going to be a positive C value because whether it's negative or positive, it will end up as a positive. Are we okay with that? Okay. Do this. I'm going to give you like a minute or less. I want to know this one. What is the square and what is the C value? And I'm going to start pulling some sticks here. So if you want to check in your groups real quick to see that you guys agree on this example. All right, so my first question is, what do you do first? Okay, in this problem, what should I do first? Destin. Perfect. 20 divided by 2 is 10. Now, once I'm at this point, there's not always a correct way. You can find your C first, you could write your square first, it's up to you. Okay, and so I'm just going to make it, I would like you to tell me, how do I write my square now that I know my half number is 10? So how would I write that, Josh King? So now that I know my half number is 10, how would I write that? Very good. X plus 10 squared. Okay, and my next question is, how do I find my C value? What do I do in order to find my C value? Devin.
You would square 10.
Very good. We would square 10, and 10 squared is perfect. Okay, does anybody have questions? Good. All right, let's do this last one. I'm just going to pull 6 for this one. You can tell me what to do. Okay? So, Robert, what's the first thing you would do on this one?
Divide by 2.
Very good. Divide by 2. So, negative 7 divided by 2. If you need to plug that into your calculator, you can. And that becomes what? Good. Negative 3.5. And since it's negative, we want to make sure when we write our square that we write that as a minus. Okay? So, how am I going to end up writing my square, Nuchia? How am I going to write my square?
X minus 3.5 squared.
Perfect. Good job. X minus 3.5 squared is correct. And then how do I find my C value? What do I do, Albert? How do we find our C value? So remember back here in our first example, the C value is really these two multiplied 2 times together. 3 times 3 makes 9. We always square our half number. So we're going to square this number. Okay, I'm going to be coming back to you. You're going back into my stack, just so you know, be ready. Okay, so negative 3.5 is what?
12.25.
Good, so C value is 12.25. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Okay, so this was all just kind of practice, but they weren't actual equations because we know that equations have equal signs. Okay, these were just saying figure out the C value, how would the square be? When you are doing these problems, this is how we are going to end up writing them. Okay, first of all, we don't want any numbers on this side because we want to end up putting a C value in there. Okay, so what you're going to do first is if you have a number that doesn't have a variable with it, we're going to subtract it or add it to move it to the other side. Bless you. So I'm going to start by subtracting 4 right now and bringing it to the other side. Okay, so that cancels out. And I have x squared minus 12x. And I'm going to go plus blank because I want that to end up being where I put my C value. Okay, equals, and what is 0 minus 4? Good, negative 4. Now, I can't just add a C value to an equation. In order to keep it balanced, what will I need to do? If I add a value here, I need to also what? Add it to the other side because that would make it balanced. Just like here, how I subtracted 4 to both sides. If I add something to both sides, it keeps it balanced. Okay? So, to now solve this, what am I going to do next? Perfect. Negative 12 divided by 2 equals what? Good. And then what am I going to do with that negative 6? Okay, we can square it. And that equals 36. So 36 is the value that we will put into each of those blanks. Okay, are we done? No, we're solving, right? Well, what does this square end up becoming? What is that? X what? X minus 6 squared. Do we agree?
Yeah.
Okay, now over here now, we have a negative 4 and a positive 36. What will that combine to make? 32. And can we solve this equation? Okay, so what am I going to do? Good. We're going to take the square root of both sides. When I do that, what do I get? X minus 6 equals?
5.65.
Good. Plus or minus. And we're going to make this a decimal. So in your calculators, go ahead. Take the square root of 32. And what did you say it made?
5.65.
Okay, and 5.65. What will I do now? Good. Add 6 to both sides. This cancels. X equals 6 plus or minus 5.65. And then I would like you to find both of those answers. Okay? So that means we're going to go 6 plus 5.65 and 6 minus 5.65. And so what answers do we get? Good. And so that's what X equals, 11.65 and 1.65. Yes, Denise.
Okay, you know where you did the square root?
Mm-hmm.
How'd you get x minus 6 squared?
This right here?
Yeah.
So remember, this is our half number. Okay? So just like we did up here where we went 50 divided by 2 is 25, and that's the number that went in my square. Same thing here. Negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. That's what goes in the square. If you were to go back and figure out what two numbers add to be negative 12 and multiply to be positive 36, it's x minus 6 and x minus 6. So instead of going through that whole process, we know that whenever we divide this by 12 or divide by 2, we end up getting the number that goes in my parentheses squared.
Oh, it's like the other one.
Yep. Okay, any other questions? Yes.
6 minus 5.65 is at 0.35.
Yes. What is 6 minus 5.65?
0.35.
Thank you. Okay. Candy for you. All right, anything else? We're good? Okay. All right, so let's try this next one, but we're gonna change this next one, just so you know, if you already started doing it. Sorry. So this problem is going to be x squared plus 4x minus 7 equals 0. Okay, first step, I'm going to see if you guys can remember. I'm going to pull a stick. First step is to do what? Jessica.
Add 7.
Very good. Add 7 to both sides is correct. Okay, and when I rewrite this, we have x squared plus 4x. What am I going to do? Good. Plus our blank. That canceled out. Equals 7, and then...
Plus blank.
Very good. And why do we have a blank on both sides? Good. You have to balance it. Okay? All right. Next step is to do what, Connor?
The half of the 4. Right?
Perfect. Yep. 4 divided by 2 is what? 2? Good. Now, my next question. What do I do with that 2 now that I have it? Okay? Caillou, what do I do with the 2? Good. We can square it, and that equals 4. And what do I do with that 4? Very good. Put it into the blanks. Shh. Okay. Next question is, now that I have this all filled out, what do I do? What's my next step in this? Hannah? How do I solve it? What do I do? Close. Okay, so the factored part is going to be x plus 2. Because remember, it's always your half number. Good. X plus 2 squared equals, and what will be on this side of the parenthesis? I mean, the side of the equal sign. 11. Where did she get 11? Well, everything on the right side she combined. So 7 plus 4 is 11. Okay, so you have to make sure you add those together. Are we okay with that? Because we had 7 plus our blank. All right, what am I going to do now? Presley. Very good. Square root of both sides. Anytime I take a square root, I end up getting what? Very good. Plus or minus. And what is the square root of 11?
3.3.
So we're disagreeing. Let's check this out. Square root of 11.
3.316.
So 3.3. Okay. Now what? Is this good for an answer? No. Okay. We are going to subtract 2 to both sides. And so we get x equals negative 2 plus or minus 3.3. Which means we have negative 2 plus 3.3 and negative 2 minus 3.3. What is negative 2 plus 3.3? 1.3. And what's negative 2 minus 3.3? Good. So that's what x equals. 1.3, negative 5.3. Any questions? No? All right. 1.3 and negative 5.3. Okay, this next one, I want you to try to do it on your own right here, and then we're going to do this one together because it does have a coefficient in front, which changes things a little. So solve this one. I'm going to walk around. If you have questions or once you get the answer, raise your hands. Okay, solve it by completing the square. Yeah, that's fine. You can leave in your chair to get a helmet.
Alright, you ready?
I would be so after you subtract
Yeah, bro, that's back.
All right. Check one more, and then we're gonna get started. Okay, most of you got this correct. Nicely done. Do I have a volunteer? If somebody wants to come up and do it? Okay, Denise, come on up. Okay, so Denise is going to work this out. I'll kind of talk through it while she's working, although we probably need to look at it. Sorry. There we go.
So you subtract 8.
Okay, please show respect. Okay, so the first thing she did was subtract 8. So she has x squared minus 10x plus her blank equals negative 8 plus blank. Next, she is taking her b value and dividing by 2. And when she does that, she gets negative 5. So now with that information, she's writing her square, x minus 5 squared. And when she squares negative 5, she finds out that her blank is going to end up being 25. And it's a positive 25, correct? Because when we multiply negative times a negative, makes a positive. Okay, so now she's going to combine negative 8 and positive 25, and she gets 17. To solve for x, she takes the square root of both sides and gets x minus 5 equals plus or minus. And then the square root of 17 ends up being 4.1 or 4.12. So in order to get x by itself now, she's going to add 5 to both sides to get that x equals 5 plus or minus 4.12. And so then she's going to go 5 plus 4.12 and 5 minus 4.12 to get her two specific answers, which are 9.12 and 0.88. And some of you rounded differently, so that's totally fine. And so those are the two answers, 9.12 and 0.88, or something very close to that, depending on what decimal you used. Okay, any questions? Very nicely done. Thank you, Denise. Good job. Okay. Now, on this next problem, we're going to go ahead and just do this one together. If you have a number in front, the best thing, if it works, is to divide all of them by that number. Will 3 evenly go into all those numbers? Yes. So let's do that. We're going to divide every single term by 3. This is not going to be a GCF because I'm dividing everything. Okay? I'm just reducing the equation. And so when I do that, I get x squared plus 4x minus 6 equals 0. Okay, what will I do now?
Add 6.
Very good. Ellie, are you getting this? Okay, so we're adding 6 to both sides. I have x squared plus 4x plus blank equals 6 plus blank. Okay, I'm going to pull a stick for my next step. So I want you to think about what I will do next in order to complete this problem. Okay, Linda, what will I do? Perfect. 4 divided by 2, which is 2. Now, what do I do next with this information? Sarah? Perfect. Put it in. Oh, I'm in a squared. Okay, that works. And 4 squared is, 2 squared is 4. And so what do I do with those 4s? Put them in each of those blanks. Very good. Okay, what's next? Kyle, what would you do now? Okay, we can combine 6 plus 4. What will go on the left side of the equation? Do you know? Close. Remember, it's always going to be the half number. And so we took 4 divided by 2. So in my parentheses, it's actually going to be what? Very good. X plus 2 squared equals 10. Okay, what is next? What do I do? Albert. Say that again. Square root it. Good. Take the square root of both sides. And we get x plus 2 equals what? Is it 3.2 or is it something else? 3.2 works. I just meant that you guys forgot that part. Good. Plus or minus 3.2. And then what will I do? Good. Subtract 2 to both sides. X equals negative 2 plus or minus 3.2. And then we will simplify. So negative 2 plus 3.2 and negative 2 minus 3.2. And so what are my answers? Good. 1.2 and negative 5.2 is correct. It could be that you didn't. Did you use the same decimal, 3.2?
No.
That's why. It's fine, as long as it's close. Okay. Yes, Francisco.
How'd you get 0.2? I got 0.16.
Because you used,
You just rounded differently. Use the hundredths. We use the tenths.
0.16.
So you're close. Like, yours is more accurate than ours.
So on the test, would we use the hundreds or?
It'll tell you in the instructions, but I think for now, I actually, even though it says hundredths here, I just want us to go to the nearest tenth. Okay? And I think even your homework, it might say hundredths, but we're just going to go to the nearest tenths. Okay, we are only going to do 2 problems in this part. I'm going to cross out this middle one here. we're gonna do these 2 examples. And then just so you know too, we're gonna cross out this last example. So we have 3 examples to go, okay? All right, I wanna give you guys a minute. I want you to try another one on your own. So notice this one, they already moved the 75. So what are you gonna do? Actually, let's do this one together and then you can do the next one on your own. What will I do? What would be my next step here? Jordan, what would you do next? Okay, I would, and that we're gonna do that, but before I do that, add in your blanks. And maybe some of you already did this without even like thinking, but put your blanks there and then go to the dividing by 2. And so 10 divided by 2 makes 5. Okay, what are you gonna do next here, Josh Campbell? Okay, square the 5. And 5 squared is? Good. So we end up with 25 in each of these blanks. Okay, what are you going to do next now, Cameron? Good, your parentheses. And what's going to go in them? Okay, so we have b plus 5. Remember that what we're actually doing is we are factoring this. So the 2 numbers that add to be 10 and multiply to be 25 are 5. Okay, does that make sense? So b plus 5 squared equals, and then we combine 75 and 25, which makes 100. Very good. Then we do what next? Aaron. Very good. Square root both sides. When I do that, I get b plus 5 equals what? Plus or minus, right? Good. Plus or minus 10? Okay, next I do what, Mark? Good. Subtract 5 because we want b by itself. And so, Caleb and Connor, I get b equals negative 5 plus or minus 10. Okay? So then I separate these out, and negative 5 plus 10 and negative 5 minus 10. Negative 5 plus 10 is 5, good. And then negative 5 minus 10 is good. And so that's what b equals, 5 and negative 15. Thank you. Everybody's here today, so we're good. Oh, Haley's in my 0 period. Oh. Okay, last one. Do this one on your own. I can check your answers, and I'll be looking for a volunteer to come up and do this one. Okay, do I have a volunteer to come and do the problem?
Okay, since you wanted to do it.
Nobody wants to do it?
Okay,
Hey, you want to do it?
yeah.
I'll talk. You just have to write.
Yeah, I'll do it.
You have a family quiz. Okay.
Caleb's voice sounds like a little girl.
Okay, good. I like how Kay started by making her blanks. Okay. Next thing she's doing is taking negative 20 and dividing that by 2, which makes negative 10, and she squares it, which is a positive 100. Perfect. So now she's writing your square, n minus 10 squared, because it's always a half number, equals 25 when you combine those together. Next, she's taking the square root of both sides. We get n minus 10 equals plus or minus 5. Remember, anytime you take a square root, it's plus or minus. We're adding 10 to both sides. And so she gets 10 plus or minus 5, which means we have 10 plus 5 and 10 minus 5. And so the answers end up being 15 and 5 for our values for n. Very nicely done. Thank you, Faye. Good job. Okay. All right. This one is applying what we actually know to a problem you might have someday. Okay. First of all, how do you find the area of a rectangle? So what they're telling you is that the area is 72 and that your length and width are these proportions, basically. Okay, and so if we were finding our area, we would end up going 3x times x plus 2 equals 72. Is everybody okay with that step? So I'm writing out my multiplying by my length and my width, and I'm putting it equal to the area that they said it had. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead, because this is not set up in a way that I could solve it. So we're going to distribute and get rid of the parentheses. So we do that, and I get 3x squared plus 6x equals 72. Now, we are using completing the square, because that's what we're doing. And so because there's that number in front, what should I do? Very good. Divide the whole thing by 3. So I do that, and I end up with x squared plus 2x plus blank equals, and 72 divided by 3 is 24. Good. Plus blank. Now, to go through and solve this, my next step would be to do what? I'm going to pull a stick. Aaliyah, what would I do next? How do we figure out what number we put here or what number goes in our square? Very good. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Okay? And then if we square 1, what does it equal? 1. So 1 goes in our blanks. What value, how do I write my square? Kathel. How do I write my square?
So it'd be x plus 1 squared.
Good. X plus 1 squared. Remember, it's always that number. And then we combine that together and we get 25. Okay, in order to solve this, what am I going to do next? Joseph. Very good. Good. Square at both sides. And we get x plus 1 equals what?
5. Plus or minus 5.
Thank you. Plus or minus 5. Next, to get x by itself, I subtract 1 to both sides. X equals negative 1 plus or minus 5. When we simplify, we get negative 1 plus 5 and negative 1 minus 5. So my answers are what? 4 and... Now, this is where some of you have to use your brain. Yeah, some of you, that's a struggle, I know. But, okay, if I were to take this negative 6 over here, what is negative 6 plus 2? Negative 4. Can you have a negative length? No. Okay, you can't have negative lengths, you can't have negative distances. Okay, and so therefore, will this value work? No, this cannot be an answer. And so the only answer for x that will work is 4. It can only be 4 because the negative 1, you can't have a negative length. Sometimes there could be 2 answers, but in this case, you always want to check. In this case, there couldn't. All right, any other questions? Yes?
You said we're not gonna have this problem? What were you saying?
We're not gonna do this last problem.
No, you said we're not gonna do problems like this, or something?
No, this is a problem in the real world where you could apply it to your life. You might have this problem in real life.
But not in the test?